their view of themselves. Can you very quickly explain the Quran view of itself in relationship to Christian scripture and, say, Buddhist, Hindu, etc.? In other words, what validity does it give for its own superiority if it claims that?
Yes, to start with, it's not so much a matter of a superior kind of a scripture. That's maybe largely a Muslim misrepresentation, which is a sort of what would you call it, an over-enthusiastic patriotism or something like this. The Quran does not claim superiority in the usual sense that people are talking about, because the Bible and the Quran are different kinds of books. The Quran reads approximately like most of the so-called minor prophets and some of the pronouncements of Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel. It is not like most of the Bible, which are stories. That is, the book of Jonah begins by saying, the word of the Lord came to Jonah the son of Amittai, saying, quote, sounds like what you're about to read came from God, through Jonah. Whereas the book of Luke begins by saying, in effect, what you're about to read is what I have gathered and put together because it seemed like a good idea. Saying it seemed the appropriate thing to do to gather the evidence and write you this story. It doesn't say what you're about to read are words God has handed me and I'm now putting down on paper for you. Those are two different kinds of things. The Quran is like the former. That's why it's really rather short. It's about 80% the size of the New Testament. And it is pronouncements. If you read I, then this is God speaking. If you read you, it's you. It's God talking to whoever is reading this. So there are different kinds of books, largely. What it says of previous scriptures, for one thing, is that it says of itself that it confirms the truthfulness of what is in previous scriptures. That is, certain things that had fallen into debate. People were arguing about certain things. If they were really important things, the Quran touches on them to say, no, it was correctly reported in that scripture on this matter, that it happened like that, confirms the truthfulness of previous scriptures. And this same verse, it's in the 5th chapter, also says of itself that it is, the Arabic word is muhaymin, which is maybe best translated by the word quality control. So it's kind of a test against other scriptures. That is, if somebody brings something and says, this is scripture, and it says such and such, it may well be the Quran says, that specifically is not so, and the evidence is in that place, go and look. It's acting as quality control in that regard. But of course, it does not step by step go all the way through the Bible and the Hindu Gupta and various other scriptures and say, chapter 1 is correct, there's one mistake in chapter 2, and 3 in chapter 4, and so on. It doesn't do that. It just talks about certain issues, and the advice traditionally given to the Muslim right from the beginning was that if, for example, the Christian comes and he says such and such is true, and it says so in my book, and you don't have a reason to agree with him, then give him the benefit of the doubt. He might be right, he might be wrong, but don't insist he's wrong. Just leave him with it unless you have evidence to the contrary. And so it is that a lot of what Muslims commonly talk about are really things that they may have picked up from the Christian or the Jew, often to their detriment, I'm afraid. I mean, they pick up some of the fairy tales and carry them over as well. But that's the key there, that it's confirming the truthfulness of key issues, and it's also setting the record straight on certain other things that people have misrepresented, and a great deal else it makes no comment on because it doesn't really matter.
So it's a man-made instrument to confirm or not confirm other supposed man-made instruments.
Oh, no, it doesn't say of itself it's a man-made instrument. As I said, it's the speech of God to man. When you read it, it says, I as God, and you, the reader. It's a pronouncement. Like, say, some, about 18 of the 66 books of the Bible that are like that, which they don't just tell the story of so-and-so, but they say, God told Hosea this, quote. It's of that nature.
The point I'm trying to make is that its validity then is based on the fact, at least in part, that it says it has the right to confirm it or not confirm other books of Scripture.
Well, as to its validity, there's various approaches to that, but the one that's maybe the easiest to explain is that the book, by its physical existence, it is paper and ink, demands an explanation of where did it come from. And what it repeats many times is that if somebody says the origin of this book is such and such, then ask them so and so and see if they still think that's true. And in another place, if they think this book came from such and such, remind them of this, so that a person is confronted with a book and he has to come up with an explanation of where did it come from. But what is the case if a person will pursue it is to find that that is not so easily answered. All of the usual ideas, oh, well, probably it was this or it was that, have already been discussed in the book itself with an explanation as to why that can't be so. So you better come up with another reason. It's when you run out of options that you have a kind of a proof by exhaustion, which basically comes down to either this man was deceived or was himself a deceiver, and if you're going to explain all the facts, you need both of those assumptions, and the point is they eliminate each other. You cannot at one time think you are a prophet and lie to people about it. You can't have it both ways. You could be neither a liar nor deceived, or you might be one or the other, but you can't be both. And so you're left with still this paper and ink unexplained. What is its origin? And that's one way of looking at how does it establish that it deserves respect. There's also the influence that it has had, that it has accomplished certain things. It's why historians of science and language and philosophy will still point to the Quran and say that's the reason why the Arabs were suddenly civilized after 10,000 years of no preparation for civilization. Something in that book is a stimulus. I hesitate to mention that, I suppose, because Islam is not an Arabic sort of a thing. Don't get that idea. 80% of Muslims don't speak Arabic anyway.